Hi everyone, welcome to week 7. I can't believe that we're already in week 7. Before going over this week's readings and the discussion question, I just want to say that the proposals that you each have created are extremely impressive. From the statement of need, which you all did so much work on, they've improved greatly from your first drafts, to the budget narrative and really identifying what costs are associated with having an effective program, to writing measurable objectives. I think the measurable objectives was I commented on every single person's drafts around needing to know, having a measure in a way that you can count what you're doing and be held accountable. So I am sure that may have gotten frustrating at times, maybe a little confusing that you didn't know how to do it, but I can guarantee that for each of you, the proposals look fabulous. You should be impressed with your work. So I'm looking forward to reading the final drafts, and I should have grades, as soon as possible. So for week 7, we're going to be reading and talking about trauma-informed care, and trauma-informed care is an evidence-based practice. There's a lot of research on it. You're going to specifically be reading about the sanctuary model, which focuses on youth and creating safe cultures within school institutions so that children are not re-traumatized or traumatized for the first time within that context. You also have readings around evidence-based management, ethical dilemmas in management, and how to humanize an organization while you're in leadership. So that's pretty much it for week 7. You're going to be describing how trauma, or you will be able to describe how trauma can impact clients or adults or youth, whoever your clientele is, how that can impact their decision making, defining trauma-informed organizations and what that means, and then just the different model components for trauma-informed organizations. Just to give you one example of how the City of Philadelphia uses trauma-informed care, and we use it across multiple agencies within the city, so DHS, CVH, the Revenue Department, the Police Department all use aspects of trauma-informed care. The Revenue Department is actually the newest addition to using this evidence-based practice, and they realized that so the Revenue Department in the city is primarily charged with collecting city revenues. Part of that is taxes. There are people that are foreclosed upon because they haven't paid their taxes, or they're receiving notices because their taxes are late. And the Department of Revenue realized how impactful that can be, that when you get a letter from the City of Philadelphia that has harsh language, or language that is telling you that you may lose your home or that there's consequences associated with not paying, that one, it can actually lead to people not wanting to interact with the city, and so then they just kind of don't respond and don't get in contact with us. And so they trained all of their frontline staff to be empathetic and really know how can trauma impact the residents of the city that are either late or delinquent on their taxes, and how can we as city employees and representatives of the Revenue Department navigate those conversations in a way that make people feel more comfortable in not only getting their needs met, but also navigating the system and paying the taxes that they need to pay. So it's been a extremely useful tool for the city, and I'm sure for all of the organizations that you're working in, whether you implement trauma-informed care or not, I'm sure that at least some of your practitioners are familiar with it. So, same routine, your readings are right here. There's going to be, let's go back, 2 discussion questions this week. One is a reflection on trauma-informed care. So there's going to be a video that for you to watch, and I want you to write down 2 principles of trauma-informed care that are discussed in the video, and then 2 examples of concrete steps that organizations took to actually implement that. And so you're going to include that information in your initial post. Then you're going to watch both of these two videos, Children, Violence and Trauma, Innovations in Juvenile Justice, and the Criminal Justice System, A Place of Healing. Both of these videos are representing organizations and practices that have been adopted to the principles that you're learning about in the initial video. So it's just really giving you an example. And then step 3 is to write an initial post that includes all of these components. So what are the 2 principles that you've identified from the first video? What are 2 examples in the concrete steps that the featured organizations took to be able to implement trauma-informed care? What practices pursued by an organization or a program featured in the videos you watched for step 2 are consistent with what you know about trauma-informed or sanctuary model approach? And then, in your opinion, could the organization or the program be doing something differently to better incorporate these principles? And lastly, if you think back to the Widener social work shared case, which we linked again here, how can trauma-informed care benefit Anita and her family? And then I want you to relate those aspects of trauma-informed care to her specific challenges and that her family was facing. For the response posts, so those are not required this week, but you are encouraged to post if you feel inclined to respond to one of your peers. So your initial post will be due by Thursday. For the second discussion question, this is on design prescriptions. So if it's possible for you to use a camera or your phone and take photos, that would be really great of the organization that was the focus of your program or funding proposal. If it's not possible, then I want you to choose another setting, either where you work or where you live, but to pay attention to aspects of the spaces within the setting that are particularly welcoming. Either do they provide hope or generally just a welcoming atmosphere. And for those that aren't, for you as a student or social worker or for your clients. So if a person ends up in one of those pictures, please ask them for their permission to be included. And make sure you take notes on why you took that photo. And then please upload. So we've had issues with uploading things in the past, but please upload 2 photos to the discussion forum for this discussion post. There's a second step to that, which is to write a post addressing the questions that I've listed here about the space that you examined, or the spaces that you examined. So the questions are going to be framed around your experience, but I also want you to consider how others, like your clients, may be also experiencing the setting. So you as a social worker versus your clients that may be there to actually access a service. What does the setting look, feel, and smell like? What is the role and presence of nature in the setting? How does the presence of nature or lack thereof impact you? What types of relationships take place within the setting? And how does the physical space impact these relationships? What values are communicated through the design of this setting? And if you could change any part of the setting so that it is experienced as more welcoming, what changes would you make? And then you do have a response post due by Sunday for this to respond to 2 peers. And if you could change any part of the setting that is experienced as more welcoming, what changes would you make? To give you an example, because the city is actually working on service design challenges, and with the homeless intake process, there are 3 intake centers within the city of Philadelphia, and they are not as welcoming as they could be. So just in taking a look, you can always see signs of telling you what not to do, and plexiglass and chairs around the perimeter of the room, and generally people are sitting and waiting for hours. So that is something that our Office of Homeless Services is really focused on improving. And we have, I think earlier in the semester, I mentioned a grant through the Knight Foundation that we've received, and that the homeless intake process and improving that space is going to be one of the things that's worked on through that grant. So again, this is a very applicable tool in real life settings, and the city is just one social service agency and system that's using it. And so again, as you think through these spaces, whether it's where you work or your neighborhood or where you live, or an organization where you applied for this grant proposal, these are tools that you can actually use even after you finish this class. So that's the second post for this week. Lastly, we have the final course survey, which I really encourage you to fill out. Again, these are anonymous. It takes about 5 minutes. For the mid-course survey, about 8 people responded to that survey, and the responses were truly, truly helpful in just getting your feedback about the course, and I've shared that feedback with my colleagues. So please, if you could, take time to fill out the course survey and let me know what you thought about the class, what was helpful, what wasn't helpful. I think that's about it. So I, again, look forward to grading your final proposals. I've reviewed them, the ones that have been turned in so far, once already, and I will start grading tomorrow evening. Have a good rest of the weekend.